The radio static. James had always been fascinated by old radios. He collected them, restored them, and spent countless hours listening to stations from far-off places. When he found an antique shortwave radio at a garage sale, he knew he had to have it. The seller, an old man with sunken eyes, hesitated before handing it over. "That radio ain't normal, son. It picks up things. Be careful." James dismissed the warning with a chuckle. He loved ghost stories, but he didn't believe in them. That night, he set up the radio in his dimly lit apartment, twisting the knobs, searching for signals. The static buzzed and crackled, a familiar sound, until something changed. Through the white noise, he heard a whisper. "James." He froze. The voice was faint but unmistakable. He turned the dial, trying to find the station, but the whispering continued. "Help me." A chill ran down his spine. He turned the radio off, but the static persisted. His heart pounded as the whisper grew clearer. "I'm behind you." James spun around, but the room was empty. The hairs on his arms stood up. He laughed nervously. "It's just my imagination." Determined to prove himself right, he turned the radio back on. More static. Then a distorted voice. "You shouldn't have turned it back on." James felt a cold breeze rush past him, though the windows were shut. The lights flickered. He grabbed his phone and called his best friend, Mark. "Dude, you won't believe this," James said, voice shaking. "This radio, it talked to me." Mark laughed. "Man, you need sleep." "I swear, it said my name. It told me it was behind me." "All right, I'm coming over. Don't freak out." James sighed in relief. He turned the radio off. This time, the static faded with it. He sat on the couch, staring at the antique device. Was it a trick? Some old recorded message? A knock at the door made him jump. He rushed over and opened it, expecting Mark. No one was there. The hallway was empty. James stepped outside and looked both ways. Nothing. Another knock, this time from inside the apartment. James turned slowly. The radio was on, though he hadn't touched it. "James," the voice whispered. His breath caught in his throat. The radio crackled, and then, clearer than before, "Let me in." James grabbed the radio and yanked the cord from the outlet. The static continued. The whispering grew into an urgent plea. "Let me in." The room grew colder. Shadows shifted in the corners, the lights dimmed, and the air felt thick, suffocating. A loud bang came from his bedroom. James ran to the door and slammed it shut, locking it. His hands trembled. He fumbled for his phone, but it was dead. The radio screeched. A high-pitched sound like nails on a chalkboard filled the apartment. James covered his ears, but the sound drilled into his skull. Then silence. He looked at the radio. The static was gone. The dial glowed red. And then a new voice spoke. "I'm inside now." James felt breath on his neck. The door to his bedroom creaked open slowly. A dark figure stood in the doorway, its outline shifting like smoke. It had no face, no features, just a void where a person should be. James stumbled backward, knocking over a lamp. The figure stepped forward, soundless, shadow stretching toward him. "Leave me alone," James screamed, grabbing the radio and hurling it at the figure. The moment it shattered, the figure let out a distorted wail. The lights flickered violently, and then everything stopped. The room was still, the air warm again. James collapsed onto the floor, breathing heavily. He stared at the broken radio, its pieces scattered across the wooden floor. A knock at the door. "James, it's Mark. Open up." James scrambled to his feet and yanked the door open. Mark stepped inside, looking around. "Dude, what happened here?" James glanced at the broken radio. "I don't know, but it's over." Mark frowned. "Over? You sure about that?" James nodded, forcing a laugh. "Yeah, man. Just a freaky night." As he said the words, the pieces of the radio began to hum. A faint static filled the air, and in the background a whisper. "James, I'm still here."